And I'm Richard Mellinger of the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. And I believe I now hereby call this special joint meeting of the Sunnyvale side to order at 5:02 p.m.
Okay, the first thing we'd like to do is go through the roll call.
I can call, we can start with Mountain View.
Yeah,
Shankari.
go ahead.
Here.
Taran Talk.
Here.
Chair Anangs.
Here,
Oh, right there. Member Fenwick.
Here.
Member Vice Chair Adamek.
Here.
Okay. That's all we have from Mountain View.
All right, and I will do the roll call for Sunnyvale. Chair Mellinger is present. Vice Chair Melman.
Present.
Commissioner Cordes. Commissioner Cordes, are you present?
Present.
Commissioner Wee.
Present.
Commissioner Swale.
Present.
Commissioner Hafman.
Present.
Commissioner Dave. Commissioner Dave. I see you. I can't hear you, but we'll mark you as present. That's all 7 present and accounted for. All right.
Greg, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
got to get in the habit of it. Okay, we're going into item number 3, which is new business. We have 3.1, which is presentation of draft concepts for the Bernardo Avenue undercrossing project. Do we have a staff presentation?
Nabila?
Hi, Dave. Yes, we do have a presentation. Dave, if you could start presenting now, please.
So I think, Nabila, were you going to introduce the project?
Yes, would you want me to do that with the presentation?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Great.
So, Dave, if you can present the presentation.
I sure will. Yep.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the special joint EPAC meeting with the City of Sunnyvale and the City of Mountain View. To begin the presentation, I would just like to introduce the city staff who will be presenting the project along with our consultant. Dave, you can go to the next slide.
I'm having a great deal here, a hard time hearing. Is anyone else having that issue?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little quiet.
Get closer to a mic. It's just too quiet.
Hello, can you hear me now?
If there's a way to boost your settings, that would be helpful.
I've been having this issue. I'm so sorry about that. Give me one moment.
It's all right. We want to hear what you have to say.
In Zoom, you can use your input volume, increase that, and also just speak up loudly.
Yeah, let me see if I can set it so that the speaker goes to my laptop. Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's better.
That's much better.
Better? Okay, wonderful. So sorry about it. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Nabila Dean and I am with the City of Sunnyvale, Transportation Engineer. I am the project manager for the project. I also have our staff from the City of Sunnyvale, Ralph Garcia and Angela Bessa, if they want to introduce themselves.
Hi, yes, I'm Ralph Garcia, Senior Transportation Engineer. We've been working on this project for a while. I was the project manager and I've handed over the reins to Nabila. So we're excited to get the project going.
And I am Angela Obeso. I'm the newest member of the Sunnyvale staff. I started about 3 weeks ago and I will be overseeing this project.
And then we have our collaborators with the City of Mountain View, Ria and Ray. Ria, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ria Hitch-Barrett-Lowe. I'm the transportation manager, and I guess Ray must be sitting in the audience. But Ray Rodriguez will be the project manager when this becomes a capital project on the Mountain View side. And we also have with us Aruna Baduna, who is helping us with BPAC, and Damien Skinner, who is our assistant public works director.
And my name is Dave Dickinson. I'm a part of the consultant team that was hired to help deliver this project. I'm project manager for this.
And I'm Steve Loop with WMH, working with Dave and the team as a civil design lead.
So this meeting will be running from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And so we wanted to kind of focus with the agenda so you guys kind of understand what we'd like to organize our thought process. We'll begin by presenting the project conceptual designs for the Bernardo Avenue undercrossing project, and then review some discussion topics we hope we could get some input on. After that, if the BPAC has any clarifying questions, we'll be happy to answer any of those. And then we'll open it up for public comments and then BPAC comments. So just a bit background about the project. We started with the City of Sunnyvale did a feasibility study for the Bernardo Avenue project back in 2004. It was done by the city staff of Sunnyvale, and it was done in order to develop a cost-effective alternative for building a bicycle tunnel underneath the Caltrain railroad tracks at Bernardo Avenue. And what we had hoped after completing the feasibility study was to apply for funding through a VTA bicycle program. In 2016, we applied for the One Bay Area Grant Funding Award, which will be used now to be able to focus on doing the construction phase of the project. Once we had completed that funding, we applied to get some consultants, and who we hired was WMH Corporation with the preliminary design and environmental analysis portion of the project. At that time, the city had only considered doing an underground tunnel underneath the Caltrain railroad tracks. But in 2018, we entered into a cost-sharing agreement with the City of Mountain View, which expanded the project scope to not only go underneath the Caltrain railroad tracks, but also underneath Central Expressway. And the purpose for this was to be able to provide a connection between South Bernardo Avenue to North Bernardo Avenue, which would be going under the Caltrain railroad tracks and Central Expressway. We recently applied for a Measure B funding to be able to fund the design and construction phase of the project. And this was a collaboration with the City of Mountain View and the City of Sunnyvale, with VTA as the lead. And the project was awarded the largest out of all the projects that were applying for the Measure B funding. And this was going to be a project that will be led by the VTA for the design and construction phase of the project. Currently, we are working on the development of the preliminary designs, which we will be presenting to you shortly. And we're collaborating with multiple agencies, private and public, including Caltrain and the county, for the project designs. As we are still receiving some input from them, please keep in mind that some aspects of the design may be altered, but tonight we are just requesting for the input on what concerns the public will have and what priorities of the design we'd like to consider when we move forward in the alternative designs that we discussed. So David, you can go over the next slides.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Nabila. Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I thought I'd just start with kind of a project limit slide to let you know where we are, to orient you. The top of the graphics is essentially north. So as Nabila said, we want to make that connection between South Bernardo and North Bernardo Avenue. Quite a big gap in there that we want to close. the next closest crossing is really Mary Street, which is about a half mile to the right off the edge of this page. But in this vicinity, we have businesses, we have developments, we have residences. There really could be quite a demand to close this gap for bikes and peds. And so the objective of this project, the purpose is really to prepare a nice, safe crossing so people can make that connection from South Bernardo to North Bernardo. Just a little bit of kind of the setting that we're working with. I just kind of wanted to run through some of the ideas of constraints, if you will, that we were taking into consideration as we're trying to decide what would be the best way to get from one side to the other. Maybe I'll start with the with the right of way, with the property, if you will. So essentially everything kind of north of Central Expressway. This is Mountain View up in that area there, and then Central Expressway, as well as this little triangle piece of property. If you can see my arrow here, this is all county right of way, and we're working with them as well in coordination. And then we have the Caltrain corridor right here, and we've had some meetings with them, and with high-speed rail coming down the line, we know that they've asked us to consider the addition of potentially a couple more tracks, also the electrification with some of the poles and lines that are going to be in there. So those are things that we're evaluating as we figure out how we're going to handle this crossing. Also in this area here, if you will, right directly between South and North Bernardo is an entrance that Caltrain currently uses for their maintenance crews, and it has some control boxes and panels and things like that. So there's quite a bit of stuff in that particular area. And then also there's some developments that we need to be cognizant of as we're going through this. One of them is 189 North Bernardo in the upper northeast quadrant of the project. And that's currently in the planning stage right now, but this whole area is going to be built out very nicely. And this building that you see here, the existing building, is going to remain. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure our alternatives were feasible and not going to impact that development there. Over on the northwest corner, if you will, 280 North Bernardo, that's a development that's recently undergone some construction. It actually even looks slightly different than what you see in this photograph right here. But that's another area that we're paying attention to. And then lastly, I would just point out that all these thin lines that you see on this graph, these are all utilities that run throughout the project site. There's a number of them: fiber optic lines, overhead electrical, water, storm drains. So there's quite a bit of things that are, obstacles, if you will, that we need to take into consideration. What I thought I'd do now is kind of go into some of the alignments. We have options that we're looking at going to the east side of Bernardo and then to the west side. Thought I'd start with the east, but even before I get to that point right there, I kind of wanted to talk about, when backing up a little bit, we were trying to consider, should we go over Caltrain and over Central Expressway, or should we go underneath it? And the analysis concluded that really going underneath it made more sense. And part of the reason is when we had to get that height to get up and over the top of Caltrain with the trains themselves and electrification and everything else, because we're going to design these ramps to ADA standards, and so the maximum grades are going to be held, these ramps became so long it actually became infeasible to do that. And then when we were looking at going underneath, the ramps became much shorter. They're in a ballpark of about 270 feet long, but it became a much more viable option to take this and cross underneath Caltrain and then cross underneath Central Expressway. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that we visited a number of other similar undercrossings in the area to try and see what we liked and take something away from it. Anyways, point being that at this time, we're kind of looking towards an undercrossing that's about 20 feet wide and about 10 feet vertically deep. So we're not set on that, but that's kind of what we've been looking at so far. So it'd be, two-way bikes and peds, 20 feet wide, and then 10 feet vertically. So getting into this east alternative here, in fact, all our alternatives, what we wanted to do was have the entrance and the exit be located at the intersections here, as you would expect. So in this particular one, we run along here on the ramp until we can cross underneath Caltrain. And then when we get to this county right of way, we actually are proposing an opening, if you will, so you can get some daylight in there and have it just kind of feel, bigger and more natural. And we are looking at different options of maybe little concrete, staircases or some, not really staircases, but just some kind of architectural treatment to make it be welcoming. And then it would continue on the rest of the way to the north side of Central Expressway. And then it would run along and reach the northeast corner of the Bernardo Central Expressway intersection. One thing I wanted to point out on this particular alternative is you'll notice that this ramp here, it's actually in the shoulder of Central Expressway, actually in the roadway, if you will. And that's because we wanted to stay out of the development right here. So with this concept here, it does require a little bit of shifting of the westbound Central Expressway lanes into the median. So they would move into the median a little bit, but it does work. It works quite nicely. Another feature I wanted to bring to your attention is this ramp that you see in the middle. And the purpose of this is for cyclists traveling eastbound on Central Expressway. Should they want to take this ramp, then they could either head down here and get to, Bernardo or Evelyn, or they could take that ramp and, and head up to North Bernardo. And of course, also counter movement to that, they could take it down to here and then jump on eastbound Central Expressway and continue. There's some pros and cons for this ramp. We welcome your thoughts on this. The pros I just kind of explained. It would help maybe with the eastbound cyclists on Central Expressway. Some of the concerns that have been raised are that there could be inadvertent wrong way moves, pedestrians and bicyclists who come down this ramp and find themselves at this location right here at the intersection, which is really the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish with this project. We don't want people to get down here and say, okay, well, I'm just going to try and make a run for it, or I'm going to ride my bike across here. So this ramp has a great value for the eastbound cyclists, but something that we would want to address to make sure that we don't get people using that we didn't intend for them to use. So this is primarily the eastern alternative that we were looking at. We have the western alignment, and I have several different kind of permutations, and I'm going to run through real quickly here, but they're all similar in concept, if you will. We're going to start just like you see here at South Bernardo and Evelyn intersection, head over here to the west, and then we're going to end up tying back here. So again, this would start on Evelyn and then run down here underneath the tunnel. And this particular option I'm showing you, this has that same ramp that we just talked about for the eastbound Central Expressway bicyclists. Now they kind of have to whip a pretty sharp U-turn to take this ramp, but contrary to that, if people are coming and they want to use it, it's a nice smooth line. And the opening for daylight would be right here at the base of the ramp, kind of like what was shown in the eastern alternative. And then when you get over to the north side here, we have some ramps and access, which I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. But so this option is if we have this ramp and where the opening would be for daylight. This option is, what if we choose that bicycle ramp is not the way we want to go? We're still proposing that there would be an opening in the median of Central Expressway so that the undercrossing structure has something to break it up and get some natural light in there and just, make everybody feel a little bit better. So kind of going back up. So that's really the options. If you have the ramp, the opening would be here. If you don't have the ramp, the opening would be here. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our connection on the North Bernardo side. So we have a couple different options here, but they're relatively similar. The idea here is that, so you have a crosswalk here and we have a staircase right here for those who are able to utilize it. And then they would take this ramp and jump into the undercrossing structure. And if you can see this on the screen, this gray outline here is what you would consider kind of a normal sidewalk. It's adjacent to the roadway and it's flat right there. So for those who would choose to use the ramp, then they would travel on this little piece of sidewalk, get in right here, and then head down here and head out across. Or of course, if they're heading down the sidewalk here, then they just would jump right into this ramp, depending on which direction they're coming. Our question here is really, would we like to propose stairs to the development of 280 North Bernardo or not include it? So here's the other option. Pardon me. So this doesn't have the stairs, but they're really they're pretty much the same. We have a staircase right here for those at the crosswalk that are able to use it. We have a ramp right here for those that choose to use it, or if they're walking from this distance right here, I'm sure they're just going to jump right on it. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the entrances down here on the South Bernardo side. And pardon me, we have a couple options. This first one here is we kind of have dual access points, if you will. You can see I believe you can see these thick crosswalk markings here. And the idea is that one of them, this one here where my arrow is, could lead you right to a staircase that will then take you into the crossing and head under. But if you're crossing on this side of the street, then you would get here where the ramp is, and you could take the ramp in. Or if you're riding your bike, for example, down Evelyn Avenue, you're probably going to want to just jump on this bike and zoom on down here. So this is kind of the dual entrance with stairs for one of them, for a shorter trip, if you will. And then the other option is if we wanted to just tighten this up and only have one crossing, if it was determined that one crossing is more appropriate, then everybody would just cross here, enter the ramp, and enter the tunnel right here. Kind of similar. It has less impacts to Evelyn Avenue, so in that way, I guess it's kind of nice. But again, that's how we were looking at how we might want to treat this end of the project. And so that's it for me. And at this point, I'd like to hand it back to Nabila to continue the presentation.
Nabila. I think Nabila might have frozen.
Oh.
Do you want to just walk us through the next stages, Dave?
Yeah, certainly. And as soon as she comes back, then I'll stop. Yes. So we're moving forward on this. We're really looking forward to the input that we get tonight. As we move forward, you can see we're going to have a community meeting, and we're going to have another BPAC meeting coming up in earlier spring 2021. So you'll be hearing about that relatively soon. The goal is to select the alternative that everybody's most supportive of by this coming summer, the summer of 21, at which point we'll go into the environmental phase with ideally with one preferred alternative. And we want to march through that as quickly as possible and wrap up that environmental phase in about a year. And then get into the final design phase, as you can see on the calendar, between summer of 22 and fall of 24. And then the goal is to begin construction in late 2024. So moving pretty aggressively, and excited about it. I don't know if I'm the right person to speak to.
So I could probably talk to this this slide. This is Ralph Garcia with the City of Sunnyvale. So this is just how to participate today. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature. If you did call in on your telephone, you can use the *9 feature, and it should allow you to participate with some verbal comments.
Yeah, but first we are going to go with clarifying questions from the committee and the commission.
Okay, so this is Greg. I think what we want to do now is go into any committee member questions, clarifying questions. I don't want to have long, we have a hard stop at 6:30. So we have to be very judicious with our time, and keep your comments short and make them questions. I said make them short. And once we get through the committee questions, we'll go into public comment, and then we'll make comments at the end. So that's the sequence of events. So let's go ahead. Anybody have any questions?
Hi, this is Valerie from Mountain View BPAC. I have a clarifying question, please. I was confused looking at the schematics of the center tunnel for eastbound Central Expressway. And I think you covered this in your, in all examples and all options, is that for eastbound cyclists to exit Central Expressway, or can people get on to Central Expressway from that? Because that's not the best part. The eastbound Central Expressway there is not super nice for cyclists.
I'll start. We recognize that. In fact, we had some discussions about how do you make sure that they're, that people, because it's not a great place to ride a bike. And so we were trying to figure out, determine like experienced bike riders, or how do we do it? And that's why we're wondering if it's the right thing to include. But we were figuring that people probably would use it, potentially could use it in both directions, right? Up the ramp and down the ramp, if I'm answering your question correctly. And that's why we're kind of debating, whoops, let me go back to it. Whether to have it or not.
Thank you. And my other clarifying question is with regard to the stairs to 280 North Bernardo. You mentioned there's some construction and everything there. What type of facility is that? Is that office, residential?
That's, are you talking about the one on the northeast side or the northwest side?
It's labeled 280 North Bernardo. Stairway connected to 2.
Yeah, so that's essentially, it's a similar building. They've just done some facade changes at the moment. So it's office. But they've incorporated visual access to the undercrossing as part of their the facade changes and landscaping changes.
Those were all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fenwick. Chair Nonks, there are a number of commissioners who have used the raise hand feature for questions. So if you open your participants tab, you can see them and call on them there, or I can call on them if you prefer. Chair Nonks, you're muted.
Yes, I am not seeing them. If there's six people with raised hands, that's all I can see.
I can call on them then.
Why don't you go ahead?
All right. As a reminder to our commissioners, please keep questions brief, as we do have a hard stop at 6:30. Sunnyvale Vice Chair Melman.
Yes, I'm concerned about two issues, mostly with the eastbound travelers on Evelyn and eastbound travelers on Central accessing the undercrossing. So eastbound travelers on Evelyn, no matter what the iteration, it appears that they would have to cross an intersection and then make a left turn. There doesn't seem to be accommodation made for access to the ramp, at least as far as I can see from the schematic, and I might be wrong. For eastbound travelers coming down Evelyn in that case, without having to go through basically 2 light cycles in order to access the ramp. Am I correct on that?
I'm
at Bernardo specifically?
Yes, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about folks that'll be traveling down Evelyn right here, right?
Right, towards South Bernardo, right. And then to access the ramp, are they able to make a left at that intersection, or do they have to cross South Bernardo and then make a left?
The idea was that they could cross here. I think I understand your question. The idea was that they could cross here. Then you may want to take the ramp here. I don't know if you want to carry your bike down here, but the idea is that they could cross right here. I think what you're probably saying is no, it needs to be more, you run through here and come in here like a regular left-hand turn into this ramp.
Well, what I'm trying to understand from the schematic, and it's hard for me, is there a curb cut there, or do they have to like cross and then go onto a sidewalk kind of thing, or are they just making a left turn and then they automatically access the ramp?
Yeah, we haven't got to those details yet, but ideally we'd want to make it so they could automatically access the ramp.
Okay, and that would be my question with respect to people traveling eastbound on Central Expressway as well. Now, I know you had talked about, a couple different iterations for whether or not this central ramp or whatever it is setup is going. But again, you don't want to make cyclists have to cross an intersection to make a left turn. That's just not a safe action. And so, that would be a concern of mine, traffic, access for cross traffic basically needs to be, done in a way that it makes sense and that it's easily accessible without having to travel out of.
Vice Chair Melman, as a note, this section is really only for clarifying questions.
Okay, so that's my question is I couldn't understand the access on that. And then, yes, and then with respect to the stairs, my question was concerned with ADA compliance in terms of making people with adaptive devices have to go to a ramp entrance to access the ramp. Again, it was difficult for me to ascertain where the specific ramp entrances were from the schematics.
Right, and just a brief answer to these questions is what's governing this is the length of the ramp that's required.
Right.
So for example, I know you're talking about this entrance right here and you're saying, why does somebody have to ride their bike through this intersection to get here? It's because we simply could not fit it. We couldn't have it stop right here. And for this area up here that you're referring to, we need this much distance from this point here. We need this distance to be able to get down underneath for the undercross. And so people need to enter at this location. We are providing stairs for those that are able to use them to keep it shorter, but we recognize that, from everybody that's coming from here or from the development or everywhere else, that they're going to need to enter it right here.
So my last question is are there any views or drawings which give us sort of a street level view of what this will look like so we can understand better what the actual approaches are? Because it's really, like I said, looking at this from the overhead, it's just very difficult.
No, we don't have those drawings yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Next up, we have Commissioner Wee from Sunnyvale.
Thanks very much. If you could switch to the Eastern Option 1 slide. I have questions based on that one. Yeah, whoops. There we go. What is the flow for a southbound cyclist coming down Bernardo and getting onto this and continue on South Bernardo? How do they work through these two intersections?
You're talking about somebody coming down South Bernardo here, they're in the left-hand turn pocket. How are they going to get into this ramp?
Yeah, oh, so do they actually go in left-hand turn pocket to actually get onto that ramp, even though they're not making sort of a normal sort of left-hand turn, because they're actually getting onto the crosswalk? And will cyclists be able to ride that, or will they have to get off their bike and walk it?
It's an excellent point. Excellent question. Right now we have the lane right here, the bike lane that terminates into the crosswalk, and then they would head over here into this ramp. So I guess we're still kind of working on some of the details for that, but that would be the idea. So what we were showing here was kind of your typical bike lane, so that there's room for the right-hand turn lane on traffic is heading south, and then this bike lane would probably get into the crosswalk and head over this way.
Mm-hmm. And then on the South Bernardo side, others go further south. From there, the cyclist is continuing on down South Bernardo. What is their, what is the flow at that other intersection on Evelyn?
Mr. Dickinson.
The audio went away.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was trying to come up with a good answer because I understand. He's saying when you're coming out right here, how am I going to get over here?
Yeah.
And so clearly we have a little more detail to work on that to make sure that's obvious.
And related to that, for pedestrians also, I like making things as short as possible. Why not actually have a high vis crosswalk right where your arrow is, just coming down that side, and that would actually sort of provide you'd run out and then they could come through with a light like a pedestrian kind of would as well.
Understood.
Yeah. Those are my only questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Next up, we have Commissioner Talk from Mountain View.
Thank you. So I noticed on the westbound, or sorry, the western, whatever, the non-eastern option, the ramp was marked for advanced cyclists. And I just wanted to confirm that the widths were the same. Was it really that it was just because of that sharp turn was why that was labeled as advanced cyclists only? So that was one question. The other question was about the ramp coming up on the north side of Central. There's a sidewalk right next to that ramp. So I'm just curious, it's hard to see from here kind of what are the relative widths of that, but you would have essentially a sidewalk right next to something which would be 10 or 20 feet deep. So I'm just curious kind of how would that work to avoid, what would the width of the sidewalk be, given that you'd have to have some sort of physical barrier to keep people from falling down into that?
Yes, I understand. So first of all, both the ramps in the eastern and the western alternative would be 10 feet wide. I'm not sure we should really be having this note here. It's it's really a preliminary concept here, and so we kind of feel like what I was trying to say in my opening remarks is you kind of want to be careful who ends up in this area on this ramp, right? So that's what I was thinking. But it is 10 feet on both options. It's pretty narrow. To your other question about the sidewalk. We know we're going to need a sidewalk in this area right here because some people aren't going to want to use that. They may want to cross over to this area and we are showing the sidewalk continuing here. And you're right, it would be 20 feet deep to be a retaining wall. And we'd have to have fencing to keep people from falling over into that. Either way, I mean, I guess we could, and maybe it makes sense because Central Expressway doesn't really have pedestrian facilities per se. That past this corner, maybe we could terminate this sidewalk in this area right here. And then we'd still, of course, have to have a fence or an attractive railing or something right here so people don't fall down. So maybe we shouldn't be showing this sidewalk between the tunnel and the corner here.
But you do have the issue sort of going north on Bernardo, right? You would have a sidewalk there, I assume? Yeah, right, going sort of up from that, yeah, right there.
Yeah, we believe this is necessary for those that want to, cross here and head up, and they have no intention of using that ramp. It's not quite as deep, but your point's well taken. It's about half as deep. So it would be, 8-9 feet deep or whatever, or tall wall at this location going down to 0. So we would need to have some type of protective railing on the top of that retaining wall.
And I guess this really the question was, is the sidewalk wide enough to have that plus still have it be wide enough for, a stroller or somebody disabled in a wheelchair or something?
Yeah, we were showing 6 feet width right now. We could push that over, and you're right. I think what you're saying is, are you considering everything, the width of the top of the retaining wall, the fence, all that other stuff? Are you making, and maybe that needs to get pushed over a couple more feet to really make sure that there's plenty of room there.
Perhaps I could add something. So the sidewalk also, and having some sort of multi-use trail or something is part of the East Wisman precise plan for this area. So if there was more extensive redevelopment of this property, that could probably be incorporated into that rather than necessarily this project, because at this stage, you're not really getting anywhere from it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Talk. Next up, we have Commissioner Adamich. I'm afraid I may be butchering that, from Mountain View.
Oh, that's great. I was just wondering if flooding is a concern at all. I imagine not, but if so, if the possibility varies between designs.
It is a concern. The groundwater table and potentially flooding going underneath. You're absolutely right. There's going to be a pump station that's going to be part of this project that we're not showing yet. We think it'll be kind of similar regardless of which alternative we select, but that is something we're going to have to address, because we're going to be about probably 17 feet down above the current grade, and so we're giving some thought to which way the undercrossing floor, if you will, is going to be sloped, so we know where all the water is going to go, and we're going to capture it, but it's definitely going to have to be part of the project.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Adamich. Next up, we have Commissioner Shankari from Mountain View.
Hi, I had 3 questions. The first of which is, it looks like both of the options, the east and the west, require realignment. So I think one of them requires realignment of Central and the other one requires realignment of Evelyn. Do you have an estimate of which is less complicated so it can help guide our decision?
I believe realigning Evelyn probably would be easier to do. Certainly the volumes are significantly less. Like in this graphic right here, well, maybe I'll go to the eastern option. It might be a little bit easier to show. So there is a pretty wide median here, and I don't know if you can see these lines, but you can see we're pushing into it. So really, bulk of it would simply be trimming the median down a little bit to make it work. But not to get too far into the weeds, but we're going to have to do some of that work anyways, because whether we pick the east side or the west side, we're going to have to do some traffic handling on Central Expressway so we can build this undercrossing, right? So we're going to build half of it at a time and push all the other traffic on the other way. But there's going to be some impacts to the median on both sides of this either way, as we just to be able to construct these undercrossing structures. So I'm not sure that I could give you which one's going to be that the east or the west, that the decision will really be made on impacts to Central Expressway. However, the county may feel differently. The county may say, look, this in the long term, you are narrowing the median. And so that may be a concern to them, whereas on the eastern options, we really don't mess with the median very much. So we still have some coordination to do.
Okay. Second question was, so for one of the options, you highlighted that it's going to be on the shoulder of Central Expressway, but I think all of the options are on the shoulder of Central Expressway, isn't that right? On either this side or that side?
Yes, this one is shoulder, and you're right. If we build this ramp, it requires us to push into Central Expressway a little bit. If we do not build that ramp, we don't have to go into Central Expressway.
But don't you have to go to Central Expressway, the shoulder of Central Expressway on the other side?
No.
Oh, so that would just use existing sidewalk resources, or?
Yeah, there's not even really sidewalk over here, and we would well, the goal would be to be allowed to push into this property a little bit.
Actually, I think that is on Central Expressway, but they've indicated that they're okay with closing the slip lane that's there at the moment. Right.
The slip lane, yeah, it's part of Central Expressway. And you can see that we are crossing a little bit over the right-of-way lane into the development. If that turned out to be not acceptable, then you're absolutely right. Expressway a little bit, but this option with no bike ramp here has the least impact at Central Expressway.
Great. And one final question. So a lot of the options are either with staircase or without staircase access. So do you have an estimate of how much you think the staircases would be used if they were built? So as Valerie Fennick pointed out earlier, there's an office building on that corner. I don't know what's on this corner of Evelyn. Do we think that there'll be a lot of people accessing the stairways or not? Do you have any estimates on that?
Based on what I know is pedestrians in particular would rather, if they're able, use the most direct route and take the staircase. We did go out and we did do some counts. We did some pedestrian and bike counts, but as you can imagine, they weren't super helpful because you can't cross right here. So there aren't a lot of people there to, so I don't want to make up numbers in that regard, but we feel that providing the most direct route for pedestrians would be a good decision.
Were there more pedestrians on the central side or the Evelyn side, given that we can only have stairs on one side?
Well, we figured we would have stairs over here, and we figured you could potentially have stairs right here. So you could have, if I understand your question correctly.
There's an apartment building at the intersection of South Bernardo and Evelyn. It's a whole apartment complex or townhome complex. So there are people there that could access a stairway. I just had to add that.
Okay, those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shankari. Commissioner Cordes from Sunnyvale.
Thank you, Chair Mellinger. My question is kind of related to what Mr. Wee was asking about and how the people are going to get around once these are built. And so my basic question is, you know, looking at how like the Borregas bike bridges were built, they land outside of the intersection so that then there's users that come down the bridges can either use the eastern or western pedestrian crosswalks to get across. So I'm wondering if you considered actually in both the eastern and the western options of actually just moving the tunnel like 30 or 40 feet further west for the western option and 30 or 40 feet further east for the eastern option, so that you have the landing completely before you get to the intersection.
So for example, what you see on the screen, why don't we take this undercrossing, move it about 40 feet this way and get this entrance on this side of Bernardo?
That's what I'm asking. That seems to be a better way to enable the person coming out to use either crosswalk, either getting in or getting out.
We will look at that.
And the same thing applies to the eastern view. If you go back to that, it's the same problem about where the ramps start. I would move the tunnel a little bit. That way it's actually better. You can see you don't have the same problem, right? You actually come out of the tunnel and then you can either make the immediate crosswalk, or you can go across the intersection and then cross if you're going southbound with another crosswalk, which obviously would be needed. So that one actually looks better. The western one has a problem about the ramp ending up in the middle of the intersection. That makes it hard to move in both directions.
I understand. I think this one's actually, like you said, maybe not as bad. You can't see it. These are supposed to be access ramps right here. And so this area is flat right here.
Okay, yeah, that one's better. So it's just a western approach question.
But your point is well taken. And we'll take a look at on this one. Maybe we should be pushing this down and try to get everybody right here.
Yeah, that's what would make much more sense, I think. That's the way the Borregas bike bridges were all built, with your landing being on the outside, and then you can use either crosswalk to get to the bottom of the ramp. Okay. That's it. Thank you. That was my clarifying.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner Cordes. Commissioner Dave. Commissioner Dave. You're currently muted.
Could you submit
Commissioner DeVay, we cannot hear you. If Commissioner DeVay, if you would email me your questions, I will read them aloud. If that works. And then I also have a few questions, and once Commissioner DeVay gets me hers, I will read those aloud as well. So the questions I have, so first off, the Evelyn Avenue realignment, why are the lanes there being considered for 12 feet widths? My understanding from the new Sunnyvale Active Transportation Plan is that the standard is 11 feet, and we'd consider going narrower if possible.
We can certainly narrow these. This is a concept right here. So we were using 12 to make sure that we had enough room for these for these, for these concepts to actually fit within the right of way. But if it ends up being 11 or less, that's certainly not a problem, to us at all. We just want to make sure we're using 12 to be conservative and figure out what the impacts are.
Understood. Another question. One of the things, there is a pending study issue in Sunnyvale. It was deferred. It will be coming up again for consideration this coming spring for a two-way bike pedestrian path on the north side of Evelyn that would run more or less from downtown Sunnyvale to Bernardo. And the hope has always been that that might connect to a similar path in Mountain View running to Castro Street. And I know that in Mountain View, there is a talk of a two-way path from Castro to Stevens Creek Trail. My question has the possibility of a two-way bike path on the north side of Evelyn running from Castro to Murphy been considered as part of these plans? The narrower alignment of, considering narrower alignments for the Evelyn lanes obviously helps with that. So that's my question. Is that being looked at?
The last time we were evaluating this was back in about 2018. And at that time, it didn't seem to be a lot of, wasn't sure whether that was really going to happen or not. We did take a look at it, and probably what you're thinking when you ask me that question is, how's it going to conflict with this ramp right here, and how's everything going?
How's everything going to fit?
That is a very real challenge for this. Our understanding at the time was that path wasn't going to end up happening. If it is something that needs to be integrated into these concept plans, then we'll start taking a look at it.
Maybe I can respond. So we have an active CIP for getting from Castro to the 85, as you mentioned. For the other portion, this is something that's on our radar, but we don't have a CIP for it yet. But it's something that is a concept that could come into a future CIP. We'd need to look at the feasibility.
Sorry, CIP?
A capital improvement program.
Thank you.
Project.
One last question, then I will get to Commissioner DeVays. I see the southbound bike lane on North Bernardo Avenue that stops at that crosswalk. Where does that bike lane actually go? Does that continue down the street tunnel, or does that just stop there?
The only place it could really take you, right, is
into the crosswalk.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're going to turn right, I suppose, or if you're going to turn this way, it doesn't really. The goal was, of course, not to have anybody. Maybe we should be eliminating that.
Actually, this is another thing from the East Wisman Precise Plan. So long term, there would be something along the north side of Central, potentially, if, based on the East Wisman Precise Plan. So it's not necessarily part of this project, but it's part of the long-term vision.
So what I might suggest there is that instead of having it cross over the right turn lane, that it might run flush to the sidewalk, and you might have a protected right turn intersection for the bike lane there, if it's going to connect to Central. With that, I will now switch to Commissioner DeVays' question. I'm reading now. I imagine many bike commuters will be heading north in the mornings and heading south in the dark part of the day. Will there be additional intersection lighting as part of this project that allows cars to see bike peds coming from unconventional places? P.S. Kudos on unconventional thinking to fit all this in.
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this. I can say that lighting is going to be a big part of this project. Lighting in the undercrossings, lighting that makes the approach ramps visible. And I imagine we're going to do whatever it takes to make this safe. I just want to be careful and not speak on behalf of the cities.
Yeah, hi, this is Nabila. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, perfect. I'm glad that worked. I just want to keep in mind that this is still a conceptual design. This is all very preliminary. So we don't really have, the breakdown of all the itemized items that we'll have, but a lot of what we are considering, like Dave mentioned, is that we do want to make sure this is a lit area, that it's visible, it's safe for the pedestrians and bicyclists. So whenever there's a crossing, we are taking into consideration the lighting situation, which is one of the discussion points that we do want to bring to the table once we get to the discussion topics. So that's something that we'd like to be able to hear more. That's something that, the lighting situation is one of the biggest priorities. We will be taking that into consideration in the design. But please keep in mind, this is still very conceptual at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dean. Okay, so I see no further hands raised from either Sunnyvale or Mountain View commissioners. I know Chair Unongst, as one of the co-chairs of the meeting, you do not have a hand to raise. But if anyone else wishes to speak, please raise your hand now. If anyone else wishes to ask questions. Otherwise, I will Commissioner Chair Unongst, do you have any questions to ask before we come back to Vice Chairman?
No, I don't. They've all been asked and answered by other people. So I think we ought to go into public comments.
We have one last question from Vice Chair Melman. Vice Chair Melman, since we are on a tight timetable, can you be brief, please?
Yes, I can. So since somebody had brought up the question of flooding, and since it was considered that there was a potential for flooding with this concept design, if I can ask, why was an undercrossing considered versus an overcrossing, if there could be clarification on that? Thank you.
Yes, we looked at an overcrossing for this, and the reason we didn't end up going with that approach is you simply have to get so high in this constrained area to be able to get up and over the Caltrain tracks, especially with the future electrification, that the ramps became so long that they became infeasible, and it just didn't work. So we did study that, but the undercrossing made more sense. It was a lot more feasible. You have to run those ramps pretty long to be able to get up and over these railroad tracks from the at-grade level, and so that was the main reason.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Chair Unongst, would you like me to run public comment as well, since I've got the participants tab working, or would you prefer to?
Sure, I think I have it now, but yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. I only see two attendees with hands raised. I don't know if I can see them. Let's see here. Switch over. Okay, April and Mary. Since we only have two, we'll go ahead with 3 minutes. If you have any comments, please do it. April, why don't you go first?
Hi, April, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, unmuted. This is April. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning tonight. We feel that the Bernardo Crossing will be a great addition and would like to express our support for it. Specifically, we think it will help to connect to development in the East Wistman area, which will be getting built out in the years to come for the East Wistman Precise Plan, as Ria mentioned earlier. I cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you for the short comments. Very good. Mary, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, Mary Dadio here. Love the idea of a two-way path all the way from Mountain View to Sunnyvale. So if there's any way at all you can make that happen, that means you've got to build a bridge over this new tunnel. Great. Regarding this particular project, there are a couple options here where pedestrians have to walk across a couple different intersections, because there's a crosswalk that's not there. For example, at Evelyn and Bernardo, and somebody's gonna have to walk across the street and then walk across another street. And so that's a long way to go for somebody that's walking. And we typically don't make drivers go way out of their way that way. So if there's any way you could make sure there's a crosswalk everywhere for pedestrians so they could go the most, not have to go through a lot of extra cycles. And so with that in mind, I would like to suggest that you, and I don't know all the considerations here, but I would like you to suggest that you consider having a pedestrian scramble traffic light at Evelyn and South Bernardo. That would solve a lot of the problems for people on bikes trying to make left-hand turns, and for pedestrians, you could maybe then get away with less crosswalks or whatever. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's see any other attendees with their hands raised. So let's close that agenda item and go into committee comments. Now, keep in mind, we only have about 25 minutes left. And again, we have a hard stop at 6:30. So keep that in mind when you make your comments. Okay, I'm seeing some raised hands here. Leah, I think you're
Thank you. I'm just top of the list, but wasn't the first one to raise my hands. I think that was Commissioner Wee, but that's okay. Briefly, I'm just concerned. I know these are just very preliminary offerings in terms of how the access will be. And I'm just concerned about the ease of use, the realistic way that bicyclists and pedestrians would access them. Like I said, I'm unsure as to what the actual access would be because there's no street level view in any of these presentations to give you an idea of what it would actually look like from the perspective of somebody using it. And I agree with Commissioner Cortes's comments that if you go with the Western options, that you should shift the entrances on the South Bernardo side so that they coincide with the other side of the intersection. And I'm just wondering if, with respect to, you have the natural daylight view, that's nice. And I'm assuming there would be night lighting inside to make people feel safe when they're using it. And whether or not future presentations would show the street level view, that would be really appreciated. So those are my comments on that. It was just difficult to understand how usable each one would be from the helicopter one-way view. Thank you.
okay. Next is Tim. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd like to commend staff in Mountain View and Sunnyvale for having us look at these at a preliminary level. This is wonderful, getting an early view and answering our questions and started heading it in. I feel like a lot of times we get these projects kind of late and it's like, oh, we don't have a lot of room to make decisions. So overall, I really like that Eastern option one. I'm trending more that way because the other one right now, the way they're designed, got a lot of little narrow switchbacks with the Western options. If you can lengthen it out and make it longer and straighter, that'd be nice. Having really wide ramps is really, really nice to allow lots of people passing in both directions for volume, for ADA access, as well as for bicyclists and pedestrians mixing it up. That Eastern option just looks cleaner and looks nice. Even though a lot of people might not use it, I really like having that middle ramp up onto Central. I do use Central both ways. I go through that intersection myself, and being able to get under and get over to Bernardo would be really nice rather than having to go all the way down to Mary and hooking back or doing some other maneuver. When you do bring this plan back, it would be nice to just demonstrate the flow of cyclists and pedestrians from all the different directions to say, okay, so I'm coming this way. What is my path through so I can see how it all fits together? I really like making the pedestrian access, as someone else mentioned earlier, as few crossings as possible, because we have to wait for a light cycle each time. It's really a pain, also for cyclists. It's nice to expedite their access through this and make it as convenient as possible for cyclists and for pedestrians. And if we make it less convenient for motorists, that's fine with me, because we need to have we need to reduce our vehicle volumes. So again, great job bringing this to us early. I really like the design setup that you've come up with so far, and looking forward to the next round. And that's it for my comments. Thanks very much.
Great. Valerie, you're next.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Again, to echo the prior commissioner's comments about bringing it to us early when there's an opportunity to take a lot of the feedback. I think it's awesome, and the work here is great. I love the tunnel options. From the eastern pattern looks like for someone walking would be a much longer route. So otherwise, I don't see any major issues with that, other than let's not make it too far for people walking. Let's try to make it convenient, particularly connecting those apartments to the businesses across the street, so across just Central. I also agree with making it, adding those removing the crosswalks in some of the designs simplified it, but would make it a lot further for pedestrians to walk. I like the stairwell options as well. If there is it looks like there would be usefulness for pedestrians to do that, like the shortcuts. I understand we still need the ramps for both bicycles and for the ADA compliance, but for someone it's always, running late to the bus or whatever, that's fantastic. I'm really uncomfortable with that eastern middle tunnel, and that gets onto Central Expressway for the advanced cyclist only. That's not really a great place to be entering and exiting, and I realize some folks would be using it, but as this is mostly to connect both sides of Bernardo, it seems like there's other ways to get on Eastern Central Expressway. For a bicyclist, going that extra quarter mile to Mary is not that far, and that would be the route that I would personally take, to stay on Evelyn a little longer to avoid that major interchange with Mary with all the ramps as well. So I don't see a lot of benefit in that ramp, and would be interested to see more on that in the future. Thank you.
Okay, next in line is Theron.
Thank you. So I'm also a big fan of the eastern alignment. I think I like the fact that there's kind of more openness, that there's that larger area that you would be going into halfway across, going through the tunnel. I do think the extra path in the middle getting onto Central is a good thing. I'm sure there's other ways that people could get onto Central if that didn't exist. So it's not like a showstopper, but I would probably use it if it was there. Yeah, so I'll keep it really short. I guess I would vote for that. Just it seems simpler, and again, the more open space is really nice.
Okay, thank you. Shankari.
So I just have a couple of comments. The first one was, it wasn't clear to me from the schematics that there was actually an option to have stairways both on the Central and the Evelyn side. So it would be good if that would be clarified, which is why I asked it as a clarifying question. I really like the Eastern option as well, because it seems to flow well with the existing road infrastructure, but I am concerned that it doesn't have any of the stairways, because as other people have pointed out, I think it's really nice to be able to just rush through quickly if you are able to do so. So I wonder if it would be possible to add stairways for the Eastern option and sort of make it the best of both worlds. Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Who's next? John Cortez. John.
Thank you, Chair. My sentiments are kind of be mimicked, matching Commissioner Wee's. So I prefer the Eastern approach because it's more open. I would like to see movements on future graphics. I'd like them to consider wider ramps, as he mentioned. What would it take, or what would the cost difference of going to 12-foot ramps instead of 10-foot? And I support adding stairs for the people that are want to rush through. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Lada Adamic, Vice Chair.
Yeah, so I don't have a strong preference between the eastern and western option. I also don't feel very strongly about the extra ramp to Central Expressway, but it just seems like such a huge undertaking. So as long as it's being done, it seems to make sense to have the ramp there just as an option for the people who would use it. And that's all. Thank you. Thanks for designing this.
Okay, the next I have is Dan Hefferman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a couple of comments. One, with a lot of these sharp turns, I suggest you design with mirrors so that people around the turns can see what's going on the other side. I also favor the east side. I wish there were stairways there. And I think connectivity is really important. So I like that Central Expressway connection.
If I could cut in now, as I don't have a hand to raise. I have a few comments. First, thank you, staff, very much for an excellent presentation. So my notes here, first off, the lanes on Evelyn do not need to be 12 foot wide. I would strongly encourage whatever plan we do come up with here not to preclude the possibility of a two-way bike lane, cycle trail, mixed use trail on the north side of Evelyn. That has the potential of being a really valuable thing and would also connect very nicely to this undercrossing. I liked the idea from one of the members of the public of perhaps a pedestrian scramble or some way to ensure that it is very easy for pedestrians on whatever corner they're on to access this undercrossing. So that southbound bike lane on North Bernardo, I understand that's not directly part of this, but I feel anytime you have a bike lane that's crossing across a right turn lane, that is a high stress interaction for cyclists and drivers. So strongly prefer, especially if that's not going to go under on the street underpass, strongly prefer keeping that flush to the sidewalk and having a protected right turn for the cyclists there. I really liked Commissioner Cortis's comments about shifting the entrance, especially if we use a westbound alignment. I have probably a slight preference for the eastbound alignment, but I think that if the western alignment were shifted, as Commissioner Cortis suggested, that could work. My last thought on this is, 4 years until construction starts does seem like quite a long time. I know there is CEQA review. I know there is obviously, any project like this has quite a lot of work that needs to be done before it can be commenced. However, you're probably tired of hearing this, but we are in a climate emergency, and anything we can do to facilitate bicycle and pedestrian connectivity helps. So I'm hoping that there can be another look taken at that timetable and see if that could be accelerated in some way. And with that, I believe that my comments are done. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few comments myself. I prefer the eastern approach. I also would like you to like more stairs. What I found is I use the San Antonio tunnel, the San Antonio train station, and if you get there at a time when the train is disgorging passengers, you find that the long, narrow ramps that they have there get clogged up. And so you end up, as a bicyclist, having to use the stairs. And this was a few years ago. You just pick up your bike and walk up and down the stairs. Well, it would be much nicer with the stairs to have a little ramp where you could push your bike up instead of having to carry it up the stairs. So when you have stairs, which I recommend, try and get a little bike ramp, just a 6-inch, 1 foot wide little ramp that you can put your bike in and push it up without having to lift and carry it over the stairs. Makes it much better. And that's about it. I think it was a really great job, a really good start. Excellent that you got us involved in the beginning. I appreciate that. And anybody have any more last minute comments on anything? We have just a few minutes. I'd like to end this as soon as we can here. Okay, I think John, okay, Valerie?
Yeah, just as you know, my preference wasn't for the Eastern layout. It sounded like kind of got mixed in there. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. I liked the Western. I liked that it looked like a shorter amount of road being torn up, but it looks way too long for pedestrians to walk. So from a pedestrian's perspective, somebody walking, I did not like the Eastern alignment. So thank you.
Okay. And anyone else? Going once, going twice. Okay.
I've got one more comment.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
For this particular intersection, I'm not necessarily seeing that we'd have that high a pedestrian load on this particular thing. And also, the really wide ramps, I really like those, because when you put the staircase in, I was concerned that narrowed the ramp somewhat and also created a narrow walkway at the street level also. And those narrow passages, it's just hard, things get congested and it gets hard to pass through, both for cyclists and for people in wheelchairs, as well as for pedestrians. And that's why having things nice and wide and broad just makes it feel much easier for both cyclists and pedestrians. Even though it might be a little longer for a pedestrian, it's just smoother, cleaner, just a lot more space. You can handle a lot more volume rather than having these little choke points. So that's my final comment. Thank you.
There's an apartment across the street, which is where I think the pedestrians will be coming from.
Yes, and my understanding is, though, there's no like retail, it's like all office kind of stuff on the other side. So it's not like there's a lot of traffic to go to restaurants or to go to shopping from the apartments. It's just fewer people likely work in that particular area, unless someone wants to correct me in that Wisman area is actually going to be a big retail shopping space. A lot of people want to get there, but I thought it was mainly offices over there.
As part of the Wisman Precise Plan, there will be retail, shopping, and restaurants added, and more residential there as well.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, Leah, I think you.
Yeah, I would second. First of all, yes, thank you for getting us involved very early in this process. That's really great that we can give you our input and perspective on this, and that it's not like a done deal and then we're all of a sudden playing catch up. So that's really good. The second thing is, yes, you need wide ramps, as wide as possible, because people with families or cargo bikes or tote trailers or whatever they're using to get their kids to school and back, you need that space to navigate around. People with double wide jogging strollers and that kind of thing. So as far as the ramps go, wider is better. Because also you want to make it as comfortable as possible for cyclists and pedestrians, people with those vehicles, to be able to make the turns to get on and off the ramps. If they're really tight, then it feels very awkward, especially if you're carrying cargo in terms of the weight distribution going up and down those ramps kind of thing. So keep it wide, watch the turns, and it'll be great to see what comes down the pike going forward on this. So it'll be something to really look forward to.
Okay, Shankari, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? Go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that if I think about the design of how this would be and how I would want to access it, one thing I really like about the Eastern option is that there's sort of a gap in the middle. So it doesn't feel like you're in this, tunnel for a really long time. It feels like you just go a little bit and then there's an open space and then you go a little bit more. So I wonder if it would be possible if we could add the staircases, then we would be able to shorten the distance that most people have to go while still keeping the sort of openness of the tunnel and not feeling like you're going into, the dingy lair of the Joker every time or something like that. So.
Okay, thank you. Tim.
I have one more question. It looked like there are little ADA level platforms in the ramp. Is that where those little marks are? I really, really like those. I noticed that some of our ramps in the area are just continuous and smooth and don't have that little resting spot. Those resting spots are really helpful. And also they're automatic sort of speed bumps for cyclists. It keeps the cyclist speed down at the same time as serving wheelchair people, because don't put bollards in. I hate bollards because I almost hit them. And if we go for the bollardless design, that would be best. Put these little speed tables in to keep provide utility as well as keep bike speeds low without having to worry about bollards. That's
Okay,
all. Thanks.
I think that's all the comments we have. I think at this point, we will adjourn this meeting and the Mountain View BPAC will continue. Rio, what do you think? 10 minutes or so?
Yep, that sounds good. And you need to adjourn the Sunnyvale side as well, if that's all of the comments. Do we have all the comments? Nabila, do you feel like you have enough comments there to provide direction?
Yes, I think that's a lot of great comments that we've gotten. Thank you everyone for giving your feedback, and it's going to be so helpful in the next phase of the project. We're looking to hopefully for the next steps, we want to make sure that we do public outreach that's anticipated for early 2021, along with hopefully another BPAC meeting. If you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to give me an email. My email is ndeen@sunnyvale.ca.gov. And if you are interested in following more about the project, please go over to our Sunnyvale website at sunnyvale.ca.gov. Just type in Bernardo Undercrossing and you can subscribe to the project. This is for both Mountain View and Sunnyvale. I believe Mountain View will also have a link to our site. And this way it will facilitate all communication for future outreach through the Sunnyvale outreach. So hopefully we'll hear a lot from the community and from our BPAC in the coming future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dean. I apologize for jumping the gun on you.
No problems at all.
Now declare this meeting of the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission adjourned at 6:23 p.m. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. So Ria, we will commence BPAC at 6:33.
Yep, that sounds great.
Sounds good.
And we have a slideshow for your viewing interest, which will start in a few minutes.
So we're using the same Zoom then, Ria?
Did you say? I'm sorry. Oh, we're gonna.
Sorry. We'll stay on the Zoom. Yeah. And then we'll start at 6:33.
Okay. Thanks.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
This is an open letter from you and me together. Tomorrow's in our hands now.
Find the words that matter, say them out loud. I'll make it better somehow.
Looking down from up on the moon, it's a tiny blue marble. Who'd have thought the ground would stand on?
Could be so fragile.
This is an love song to the earth. You're no ordinary world, a diamond in the universe. Heaven's poetry to us. Give it fire. Give it fire. Give it fire. 'Cause it's our world. It's not about possessions, money or religion. I'm